Hi, I'm Gail Banack.
And I'm Ilana Santone. Welcome to the She Means Business podcast. Throughout our careers, we faced countless questions and sought advice from other women we respect and admire. And that's exactly what this show is about.
Each week, we aim to help you achieve your goals by sharing our experiences and talking with successful leaders, offering real stories, practical advice, and actionable takeaways for women who mean business. All right, let's do this. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the She Means Business podcast. We are so thrilled to welcome Adelle Archer to the show today. Adelle is the CEO and co-founder of Eterneva, a celebration of life brand that reimagines the experience around loss by making diamonds from ashes or hair. Eterneva was named Consumer Startup of the Year by the Stevie Awards and was featured on Shark Tank, receiving investment from none other than Mark Cuban. Adelle has been featured on both Inc. and Forbes' coveted 30 Under 30 lists. Prior to founding Eterneva, Adelle received her MBA in entrepreneurship at the Acton School of Business, considered the Navy SEAL program for entrepreneurs. She spent 4 years as a product marketing leader in tech, launching major products to market with partners like Amazon, eBay, Square, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter. Wow, that's a lineup. Welcome to the show, Adelle. We are so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. Likewise, so happy to be here.
Amazing. So Adelle, you have a very unique and incredible business, and we can't wait to dig into it and hear how on earth you decided that this was your calling, but it is. So please tell us kind of where you started and how Eterneva came to be.
Yeah, totally. It was quite surprising, I think, to my co-founder and I to end up building an end-of-life company. That wasn't necessarily what we thought we were going to be doing. In the very beginning, we came from a tech background. We both worked in tech for some time, as you mentioned. And so we were kind of looking at, okay, what's the thing that we're going to start? And we had gotten introduced to the idea of lab-grown diamonds. And this was probably 2018, 2017. And not a lot of people had heard about it yet. We started working with this group that was growing diamonds more for industrial uses, and they wanted to commercialize on the consumer side. So we thought maybe that would be what we work on. And as we're kind of going through that exercise on a more personal side of my life, I had my very dear friend and my business mentor, Tracy. She got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer out of the blue. And Tracy was like my person. She was a huge part of my 20s. I was over at her house literally every week. She was just somebody that, I think we all have somebody in our life that we're like, man, I don't know why they took such an interest or invested, we're so intentional about their investment, but I was very blessed to get to have that. And so when Tracy got sick, one of the really just tragic things about it was that she didn't have a lot of next of kin to take care of her. So it ended up being me and her aunt and her best friend that kind of rallied and said, okay, well, let's support in however we can through her end of life process. And so Tracy knew that she wanted to be cremated, but she didn't really know what to do from there, and kind of empowered us with hey, find something cool, find something meaningful. So I was doing a lot of that research. And that was just really eye-opening. I think, you go to the end-of-life space, and I just, I was so used to great experiences in tech and, people who really are thinking through the customer journey and the brand. And, a lot of that didn't exist in this industry. It was very transactional. It was very kind of antiquated and just not really finding anything that felt special. So then over dinner one night with a diamond scientist we were working with, he was the one that was like, well, there is carbon in ashes. And if we could get the carbon out of Tracy's ashes, maybe I can grow you a diamond to honor her. And I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're doing that. And so she was our first diamond that we made. And I think it was pretty obvious from there, let's go build that. That's actually Tracy. So that's her black diamond that I wear every day. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And did she know that that's what was going to happen?
She didn't get to know, unfortunately. She had passed by that time. But I think one of the things that was just really special was one of her dying fears was that she wasn't going to be remembered because, again, she didn't have a ton of lineage. And, she was like, I'm going before I wanted to. Have I left my legacy yet? And what her aunt did an amazing job of is she curated all of these stories and read them at her bedside. So I feel like she passed away knowing the impact that she had had. And then I think what Eterneva stands for is like keeping her legacy alive. Like it's so cool to think about how many millions of people know Tracy. Like her story gets told every single day by our team, you know, everybody that watched Shark Tank knows about her. Like it was so cool.
That is so incredible. I mean, you know, I that's such an amazing story. I personally experienced two significant losses in the last couple of years. My grandmother passed, and my childhood friend who actually also had pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And so it's just I completely empathize with what a horrible loss and how difficult that time is, and this feeling of kind of hopelessness about how to remember them. And I actually. It's funny. I have a necklace that I wear every day, as well to remember them. And nothing felt kind of enough. So it really is incredible that you found this. You know, what have you found is the biggest kind of barrier to people wanting to take advantage of your service?
It's a good question. You know, I think it's like been actually just a really fascinating evolution to watch over time. When we first started out, I really think it was like people either loved it or they hated it, you know, and they were like, they either thought it was like the most beautiful idea or that it was weird and creepy. But I actually just think that was that was their own relationship with mortality and death, you know, as they would try and trivialize it and be like, oh, like wearing grandma on your finger or whatever. And, you know, then you talk to somebody that actually did experience a real loss, you know, of a significant other, or, you know, somebody, especially if you experience a loss too soon, and they're like, oh my God, the idea of being able to have my most important person with me all the time in a beautiful form, you know, and then that could be passed down. Like, yeah, absolutely. So it was just very interesting. I think that's kind of one of the first lenses is if someone hasn't experienced loss yet, they're not going to get it at the level that, you know, when somebody has. But that being said, I think it's been fascinating to watch is just our cultural shift and how, you know, I do think people are becoming more open to end of life conversations. And I think a huge catalyst of that was COVID. You know, we had to kind of face our own mortalities and think about it. And many of us knew people that were affected by that and did lose loved ones that way. And so I've just noticed, like, while we still get to raise a lot of awareness that this is something that you can do, it's probably like 90-10 now of people receiving it like, oh my God, I love that, versus I'm not so sure yet. So yeah, I think that's just been really interesting.
Well, even the term afterlife market, like I've never even heard that before. That's incredible that that's like a thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
It seems like you've had a lot of success at an early age, but you know, and rapid success. Like you kind of had this idea and then it started. So from an outside looking in, it seems like, wow, very successful, very fast. Curious about whether you've had a failure or setback or mistake as you've been shaping the direction of your company that you kind of reflect on and say, wow, big learning, or, you know, something I take forward in terms of how I proceed with the future of the business itself.
Oh man. Yeah. You have those like every month, every quarter, every year. Like I can think of many. And I think especially as a first-time founder, I have so much empathy for first-time founders because, you know, you're learning it all for the first time. And I think that the company, I really believe that, you know, the company's success is a direct correlation to how much work you're doing on yourself and your ability to expand. You know, I look back on like the baby version of me that started the company, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like how sweet to kind of think about like how much my leadership has developed, you know, and all the mistakes that you make in the beginning, or I made in the beginning, of trying to kind of over-engineer things, or like just learning, I think, how to lead teams and to have the right amount of, you know, being super clear on the vision and direction, but empowering people and like allowing them to know, you know, what success looks like. It's an art, you know, and it's not something that I think people are just organically good at. You learn by, you know, getting it wrong a bunch of times. So I think leadership is definitely one, and just like good operations foundations. You know, I learned so many lessons. Just, I think like being a VC company, there's a lot of expectation to be growing. But then I think when you run a very efficient business, like you're just always going to be better off. And so I think like we kind of fell into that trap early on of like, go fast. And, you can kind of like invest too much too soon and later need to kind of cut costs out. And yeah, I think now I take a much more intentional approach where it's just like, we'll raise money and I'm like, and now we're not going to touch it. We get to be very efficient and very like intentional and methodical with how we do things through all of the setbacks. I think it also is a huge part of shaping your character and shaping your company's success story and the hero journey that, you and your team are on.
What's an example of something that you did early on that you had to kind of change and pivot on?
I'll give you an example of one where resourcefulness, like needing to, like in the very beginning, I remember one of our biggest kind of first early crises was our supply chain went away, like overnight. And we had all of these diamonds in process. And I'm like, I'm not going to call a mom and tell her I'm not delivering her daughter's diamond. Like, that's just not an option. Right. And both my co-founder and I remember we were like sitting in Amsterdam, being like, well, what are we going to do? And instead of going home that day, we both like booked flights and went different directions. I went to Germany, he went to Switzerland, identifying like, because what's unique about our space is there's not just like a bunch of, external partners that you can go outsource to, especially in the beginning. Like this is like the craziest thing you could pitch a company like, hey, I would love for you to grow diamonds from ashes, from dead people. And so, yeah, it was like very hard to find supply chain partners in the beginning. And I remember it was just like, okay, we scoured the internet. We both got on planes and just had to go, enroll the heck out of these business owners to become a part of, what we're doing. And I think that those things have always paid off. It's just like on the other side of a breakdown, like it forces innovation, it forces the breakthrough.
So as a female entrepreneur, what do you think are some of the unique challenges that you are faced with, and how has that shaped your leadership style?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's been kind of a journey and an evolution with how I've even maybe experienced it and perceived it. In the beginning, I used to, be like gender blind, like I don't experience it, like probably because I'm generally pretty confident. I do have like a natural confidence, and I think that's a big thing for a lot of women is just like the development of confidence, because that's just important in business. If you're raising money or if you're, negotiating a deal, like you need to embody those characteristics. But I think what was really interesting as we continue to grow, as we continue to scale and, bring additional kind of team members on, that's where I did kind of start to feel a bit more dynamics of, I don't know, just what people would expect of a male CEO versus a female CEO. And if you said something one way, that people would perceive it. If, a guy said it one way, they don't perceive it that way. And, that like there was just like some interesting kind of observations around that. And then I think really we had a chapter where, we had a very male executive team. And I think that was a big learning for me, actually. Earlier days, I would hire a lot for, who's the best at this position. And I want the best, and I want them to be an expert in their area. And I think, honestly, if I look at that very, if I really look at that honestly myself, I think I was outsourcing my confidence in some of those areas, and wanting to feel like I have somebody who's got it. But as a result, I built a very masculine leadership team. And, I think we went through some kind of like a period there where I got to really rumble with what does owning my voice look like, and what does, setting a standard for what I want our culture to look and feel like, kind of being the strong version of myself and realizing that there was kind of this like people pleaser that could show up, and wanting to keep the peace and wanting to keep the harmony, and realizing like that actually can be very detrimental, and so it's really informed how I think about our team today. Like I really look for, a balance of masculine, feminine energy, that we're very collaborative, that we're respectful of, just diversity of opinion all the way around. I think it's really important that everybody feels like they have a voice. But yeah, and I think especially as you become a bigger company too, like as you start raising larger rounds, Series A, Series B, that's where you do look at statistics and you're like, dang, that's crazy that only 0.5%, of growth capital is going to women. Like it's like 2% of overall venture and then 0.5% at the growth stage. And that's where you definitely see all of the venture funds that had female founder theses drop off, and then you're kind of in the, more traditional kind of ecosystems. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think there's a lot more work to be done in the venture community to create avenues to like allow women to succeed at that level, not just start the business and get through the pre-seed round and the seed round, but actually get to the A, the B, the D, and exit. I think we're still at like only 24 women having like taken a company public. It's crazy.
In Gail's introduction, we talked about how you were on Shark Tank, which is obviously a really cool experience. You've got investments from big names like Mark Cuban and other great endorsers. And so it sounds like you've had quite a great experience around this business venture. And you said before we came on air that that there was a lot of stress around the Shark Tank experience and kind of building the company. Talk about yourself under stress and that experience and what it taught you and how others might learn from what you had to do to go through that experience. Because it's something that a lot of us don't ever haven't even talked to people who've been on Shark Tank, let alone been on it. So talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, totally. Well, it was, it was a really big moment, I feel like, for us at the time. Like, it's been a number of years now. We were on it in 2019, but I think it was a really big moment for us at the time because what it represented was they actually had never had an end-of-life company on the show before. And again, we were kind of in those early days of people being like, is this weird? Is this cool? And, we've been, I feel like, a shaper and a conduit of cultural conversation around end of life. And so to be the first end of life company that they brought on to that show and had a kind of a national platform to really, open up a topic that historically had been stigmatized was just really cool and very meaningful. And we intentionally made our pitch actually like a video montage of all of our customers. And it was just really heartwarming and awesome. But yeah, the experience itself is pretty intense. I think you don't realize so many people watch that show. It's crazy. It was nerve-wracking going on it. And, of course, just kind of like doing the filming and everything. We had a very intense episode too. Like, you watch those ones where they're like really easy on the founders. And then the other ones where they're like, dang, that's a spicy episode. We had a spicy episode, but it was very good. We got 3 offers and Mark Cuban invested. But I think actually probably one of the most kind of nerve-wracking things was actually between filming and airing, because you don't realize how many people in your life watch the show, and everybody you've ever met is telling you they're going to have a watch party at their house. So that was just wild. But, what's really, really touching is that because of that, we are hearing stories today. Like, I have a couple Google reviews I just read recently. Like, we had one where a mom was watching it with her daughter, and her daughter's like, Mom, like, this is the coolest thing. Like, I want to make you into a diamond. She's like, okay, honey, you can make me into a diamond. She's like, that's the plan. And then her little girl passed. And so it was like her mom knew, okay, I know what I'm going to go do now because I know what my daughter actually wanted because we watched this episode. And we keep hearing stories like that. Like, I literally, craziest one last week, a guy that we went to high school with that my husband was very dear, was friends with. We just found out he got bile duct cancer very suddenly, and he was in hospice. And his wife called me, and she's like, John told me he saw your Shark Tank episode, and like, this is what he wants. He wants me to have a diamond because he saw you on Shark Tank. And I'm just like, wow, to know that it's kind of created that, and it has like this epic ripple effect like that is really cool.
That's incredible. Well, before we move on, I do want the opportunity for you to share, where people can go to find out more about this. And if they want to learn the process and what happens and what's involved, can you share that with us?
Yeah, 100%. So, obviously our website, Eterneva, ETERNEVA.com. But we actually are like amazing on social media. So if you're on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, that's like where it's at. I would say definitely follow us. We've got I think we're about to hit 500 million views across our videos on social media, which is awesome. And you know what we've really tried to do, like from the beginning when we started Eterneva, we were not the first company. There were actually some other companies that were doing this. And so kind of the original, idea for me was I was going to just go work with one of them and do this for Tracy after the scientist mentioned it. And I think like I was ready to spend the money. Like I was all in, and I had a couple conversations, and it was just like, nobody was personal. Like nobody asked who she was or like what her name was or what our relationship was. And then I think what really was kind of gave me pause was like nobody was willing to share about the process and give me the comfort to know like her ashes are truly going into that diamond. How do you prove that? How do you show that? Where are your labs? Those are big things. Like this is a huge leap of trust, when you're going to look to do something like this. So that was really like how one of the big kind of ideas when we started is we're like, we want to be super transparent and give people comfort and confidence. They know exactly where their loved one is in process. They know what's going on. Here's where we're at. Here's exactly the lab we're at. And so what we started doing was we actually would share, updates and videos throughout the process. And people just ended up getting like so, like we would get these crazy reactions. Like they loved it so much that we started making that very storytelling driven and very experiential and like much more of an experience than just like, working towards a diamond at the end. It wasn't about a product. It was about the journey and the experience to get there. We do a lot of behind the scenes of the lab. We have our lab actually in Texas, and we're like, hey, you want to get a tour? Like, come on down. Or you can just nerd out with our scientists and watch a bunch of our great content. So we share all about our process. And, there's also just like super heartwarming videos. The day the diamond comes home, we call it the homecoming. And it's a really special day. Like, as you can imagine, there's been all this anticipation leading up. Typically, it's about like 7 to 8 months of
wow, that's
time.
a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah. But every month we're giving them these drum beats of updates, and they're witnessing a transformation. Like a lot of our customers say this kind of feels like a gestation process because they're getting to witness a transformation of state over time, and they're building excitement about it. Yeah. The day the diamond comes home is really special. And just the stories are so good, like watching someone see their diamond for the first time and they're like crying, and like it's its own form of aftercare, and helping people process and be active in their grief and making meaning in the wake of loss.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, what we go for.
So we typically ask our guests what advice they'd give their younger self. I mean, you have a shorter career than many of our guests have had, but you've certainly had a lot of learning in that time. Yeah. So I guess maybe just advice you'd give your younger self, or advice you'd give young entrepreneurs who are starting out after you in terms of how they can build their dream company or find that niche that really kind of moves them to success, the success you've had.
I think I was like such a perfectionist in my 20s. I was like such a hard charger, straight A student. But I think it was the total like go at it alone, and you can only go as far, go with the team, and you can go so much farther. And I think that's been really a learning for me is learning how to, kind of slow down to speed up and really like sink in with the team and build the relationship, focus on the relationship of the team, and then pour into people, like empower them that like, damn, we can do great things together. Like, let's go take that mountain and let's take it together. And you're going to be the badass that makes that happen. So I think it was really kind of like shifting, that the spotlight doesn't need to be on me. I can like pour that into other people and like, look how, just like how much farther we can go. So I think that's tends to be like a bit of a natural evolution for young people, is kind of going from like the I focus to the we focus to the all focus. But, just having that awareness, I think is really powerful. And, then continuing to just do the personal development work, I think is just really, really important. I've been very blessed that, I found things like Tony Robbins at a very young age, and I've done all of his events. I've done a lot of emotional intelligence work, and I can't even tell you how much that's elevated me as a person. And, I'm like, man, I wish I did that when I was 15. Like, so I don't think that there is an age that's like too young to start doing personal development work. And just, learning how to have difficult conversations and communicate effectively, I think is a really powerful one. Like I used to really avoid hard conversations, and I watched how that would get me, in trouble because I'd be kicking a can down a road until it kind of built up resentment on something. And so having the courage to be able to go into a hard conversation and just be curious and hear the other person out in full, and make requests and be on the same team of, hey, okay, moving forward, let's do this way, which will probably be more productive for us. That's definitely been a skill, I think.
Wow, that's a lot of learning, and really great lessons as you've gone through this, and it's been really a thrill to have you on. I mean, I've learned a lot about your business, something I didn't really know a lot about until we met, but also like just a really impressive and interesting career path for you and this business, the way you've grown it, and I love the way you describe it about the experience, not just a product, but the experience itself. So Adelle, thank you for being here with us. We've learned a ton, and we're so thrilled that you were able to join us. And as you go forward, and we'll be watching you on your journey and looking forward to it.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Adelle.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow, that was a great episode for the reason of it's a really cool company with a really cool story and lots of lessons in there. And I wrote down a number of things, but I think for me, there were a couple of themes that kind of were tied to each other. The first was just this notion of hiring for fit and talent, and not just talent. And she talked about that kind of under the auspices of confidence and like outsourcing your confidence, but also has real applications to the way you lead. Because if you want to lead teams that are going to be super powerful, it's not actually about just talent. It is about how you come together as a team. And like, I probably have said this before, and I'll continue to say it. It's like, if you hire for being greater than the sum of the parts, you have an awesome high performing team, which allows you to do so much more than just having a bunch of talented people who don't gel or support or rally and for the outcome. So,
well, and it's harder. It's harder it's easier to look at a resume and be like, okay, this person's qualified, the most qualified, check. And versus saying, okay, and how will this person fit the team? How will they complement me, each other, the company? What's their passion? Especially for a business like hers, where I feel like you want somebody who's passionate about the business, but you want somebody who's just passionate about whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, as I reflect on my career, I remember the first team I was on where I was like, wow, this is exactly what I talked about. We may not have been, it wasn't that we loved each other. It wasn't like we went out for, drinks on a Saturday night together or something, but the power of the skills and the common bond and the common like mission on what we were trying to accomplish made us just so powerful. And I like the way Adelle talked about that in terms of like they're on a mission to win together, right? Like they're building something meaningful together. And that notion of I to we to all, I think she said that at the end in terms of her reflection. And I think that really describes how she went from kind of outsourcing her confidence to becoming more confident with the right people around her, and leading from the confidence kind of from a position of strength. Exactly. I'm confident and I'm building my confidence up versus I'm kind of not so confident, and therefore I have to hire people to make me feel more confident, and I'm not sure it's going to work.
That's right.
And I thought that was, I'm going to use it again, the I to we to all, because the faster you can get to all from I, which is a common thing for more junior people is, that transition from I to we to all is a really powerful lesson.
Thanks for listening to this episode of She Means Business. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to podcasts, and head over to our show notes where you can find helpful links and summaries of key points from the episode. We'd also love to hear from you on LinkedIn or Instagram, so please follow and DM us at the She Means Business podcast. See you next time.